Before Naughty Dog created one of the most celebrated and state-of-the-art video games of all time in Uncharted, they were responsible for creating a character that would change the face of gaming for its era. Although Sony didn't initially want a PlayStation mascot, millions are thankful that they went through with it, as the Crash Bandicoot series is one of the most beloved franchises, especially around the late 90s and early 2000s. Though this series hasn't always upheld that kind of quality, we thought that we would take a look back at the top 10 best Crash Bandicoot games of all time according to Metacritic. And of course, just before we do go into the video, if you do like this type of content and you would like to see some more top 10 videos, be sure to hit that subscribe button and of course, like this video. And with all that said, let's just get straight into it. These are the top 10 best Crash Bandicoot games to have ever been released according to Metacritic. Number 10. Crash Bandicoot Wrath of Cortex. Wrath of Cortex marked a dark time for the Crash Bandicoot series, as though it was the first Crash game to be released on the next generation after the original PlayStation. It was also the first Crash Bandicoot game not developed by Naughty Dog. Though it is still a fun game for the most part, it's the same gameplay that has always been, smashing boxes, spinning away boxes, but the criticism were drawn exactly for that, as it was too similar to Warped. As each previous Crash game had advanced the mechanics and the level design, Wrath of Cortex went one step backwards. Number 9. Crash Mind Over Mutant. Being a sequel to Crash of the Titans, Mind Over Mutant works in the same way, as Crash controls various titans that have different abilities, such as telekinesis and slowing down time. Given the fact that Mind Over Mutant was the last Crash game that fans saw for over 12 years until the release of Crash Bandicoot 4 in 2020, not including the remakes of the originals, it did leave a bad taste in fans' mouth for a long time. The game was praised for being better than its predecessor, but most critics were disappointed due to its repetitiveness and treacherous camera. The cutscenes in this game also used a weird different type of animation, and fans would much prefer just the cartoon version. Number 8. Crash Bandicoot 2 Entranced. Entranced is the first game of a bunch to be released on handheld consoles, and it featured a brand new story and introduced a new antagonist, Entrance, and though it isn't as funny, meta, or as interesting as the stories in the Crash games before it, it was however worthy enough for the Game Boy Advance. The volume of content in the game was very impressive, with over 30 levels, including some fun ones taking place inside a hamster ball. Number 7. Crash Nitro Kart. Crash Nitro Kart is the second kart racer in the Crash series after Crash Team Racing, and though it's inferior to the first karter, the follow-up is still fun, and it actually features some tracks that are more exciting too. The console version of the game was heavily criticized for dropping frame rates and the tunnel vision, as the camera was way too narrow. However, the Game Boy Advance version was much more well received, and it played a lot faster too. The game has since been redeemed, as most of the tracks found in the game were rebuilds of the 2018 remake of Crash Team Racing. Number 6. Crash Bandicoot The Huge Adventure. As The Huge Adventure is another game released for the Game Boy Advance, it's still the best of the lot. It was the first game in the series not to be released on the PlayStation of any kind, and it was the first hint fans got of the whole Crash Bandicoot multiverse, as it features an alternative timeline after the events of Warped. The layout and design of the game is extremely similar to the original trilogy, and some of the levels are the same, just reduced to 2D for the handheld console. This game was criticized though for lacking a bit of innovation. Number 5. Crash Bandicoot. Being the game that started it all, the idea of Crash Bandicoot was transparent, as it was clearly a cute animal mascot to boost the PlayStation sales. But with that said though, that doesn't mean that the first game isn't great by any means. Crash Bandicoot may have its setbacks, as the controls are pretty limited, and they wouldn't be corrected until the follow-up, but most critics couldn't resist the charm of the mascot. From the Aztec jungles, the creative bosses, and the layout of 3 different worlds, this game definitely hits hard, and is ingrained into the memories of everyone who played the PlayStation in the late 90s. Number 4. Crash Bandicoot 4 It's About Time. In what was the best move by the developer, Toys for Bob, they completely ignored every single Crash game released since Wrath of Cortex, even if there are some hilarious references to those games. In this game, the jokes and references land every time, and the meta jokes are one of the reasons why Lord and Miller should helm a Crash movie. On top of that, the 4th entry in the series introduces multi-universes and Crash jumps from sea creatures riddled pirate towns to New Orleans-like fiestas to Cortex's castle from the very first game. The biggest criticism that the game received was the fact that it was so difficult, especially considering it's essentially a kid's game. Number 3. Crash Team Racing. As something of a victory lap for Naughty Dog, the developer's last affair with Crash Bandicoot, after creating the original trilogy, was the kart racer Crash Team Racing. Though it might not be the most iconic kart racer of all time, it was still up there as one of the most fun karters of all time, especially considering the 2008 remake was so well received and is still being supported to this day. The original game features 16 different tracks, which are all inventive and loosely based on levels from the main trilogy, and players can choose to play through most of the series' previous characters, but the game again suffers from being brutally difficult. Number 2. Crash Bandicoot 2 Cortex Strikes Back. With Cortex Strike Back being released in quick succession, following the original game by just a year, everything was expanded upon. First of all, the controls were handled way better, as Naughty Dog added the much needed double jump, body slam, and the skid. And in a move that hadn't been done before, players could choose which levels they could do first in each warp room. The bosses also in Crash Bandicoot 2 Cortex Strikes Back are much more innovative and generally just fun to play against. Number 1. Crash Bandicoot Warped. Rounding out the trilogy of Crash Bandicoot games developed by Naughty Dog, Warped was the best of them all. The game brought back the warp rooms, but this time introduced time traveling so that levels could be set in different periods of time, whether it's avoiding knights, swords in medieval times, or riding a tiger over the half-built Great Wall of China. There's even a surprising compelling story, as Uka Uka, an evil identity of Aku Aku's brother, takes over Cortex as the main antagonist, although Cortex is still present and trying to disrupt Crash at every single opportunity that he gets. The only setback in this game though is that it can be frustratingly difficult, especially the motorbike levels. And so there you pretty much have it. Those were the top 10 best Crash Bandicoot games to have ever been released according to Metacritic. So what did you think of this top 10? Do you agree? Or perhaps that you think that there was a Crash Bandicoot game not on this list that should have been included? Or perhaps the order of this list was wrong? If so, do let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below. I would love to hear it. And of course, not forgetting that if you do like this type of content and you would like to see some more top 10 videos, be sure to hit that subscribe button and of course, like this video. I'll also leave some more videos at the end of this video if you would like to check them out. Thanks very much for watching guys, and I will see you all next time.